Pygame is a library for Python that allows you to create some fairly sophisticated games uh, with relative ease. And what I mean by that is that it's easier to do a lot of this stuff with Pygame than it would be to do it without Pygame. You can absolutely create games in Python without using Pygame, but Pygame does a lot of things for you that you might take for granted in terms of creating a game. So, some of the things that it does for us is that it makes the objects and the structure of a game easy to use because it does some things with those objects in the game that you maybe would take for granted, but are actually somewhat difficult to keep track of. It manages what are called sprites. A sprite in a game is any object on the screen that moves typically. So if you see something in a game that moves, it's probably a sprite. And a sprite could be the character you control, it could be the other characters. If you're shooting a bow and arrow, it could be the arrows that fly across the screen. All of those things would be sprites. Well, most games depend on some ability to detect when one sprite is touching another sprite. If we're talking about the bow and arrow example, if I'm shooting a bow and arrow at targets across the screen, my character might be a sprite, the arrows would be sprites, and the targets would be a sprite. And I want to know, did my arrow hit the target? My game has to detect whether those things are touching or not. If I'm flying a spaceship through an asteroid field, then I need to be able to know if my spaceship runs into an asteroid or not. So keeping track of all of that stuff that can be going on in a screen all at one time can be very, very busy. But Pygame actually makes that easy for us. It's called collision detection, and it's one of the primary things that a game engine does for us. Um, screen updates. Screen updates, well, that seems a little weird, but keeping in mind that things can't actually move on a screen, right? Each movement on a screen, if we see something animated on a screen, what we're actually seeing is a whole bunch of pictures that are slightly different from each other shown in rapid succession. So we have a picture with a ball here, and then we have a picture with a ball here, and then we have a picture with a ball here. If we show them quickly to each other, it looks like the ball is moving. So in a game, if you've got a lot going on the screen, your game engine has to keep track of where each object is, how much it moves, and it has to have the next screen ready to show. Because remember, a lot of games are running at 30 to 60 frames per second. So we're talking about 60 different new screens that it has to show each second, in which all of the things on the screen are moved appropriately. So there's a lot going on. So the screen updates are useful. Interacting with different controls, whether it's a mouse or keyboard or some kind of game controller, which Pygame can also do for us. It can keep track of those inputs and what it means in terms of the game. In addition, sounds, writing on the screen, drawing things on the screen, Pygame can do all of that for us, and it makes it really quite simple.